What's up everybody, this is KG. Today I'm going to be doing a video on my personal experience as a caregiver for my mother. If you already follow this channel, you know that my mom appears in all of our cooking videos, our Cooking with Pops episodes. But at this particular time I need to let you guys know my mom passed away on June 12th, 2021 in the arms of my father and myself. Mom had Alzheimer's and dementia for a number of years. We pretty much figured it out around 2015 that something was up. And for about the last 7 years or so, we have been dealing with that in our lives. Hence this video, to give you some more details and ideas about what it's been like to be a caregiver for my mother. Now my mom's passing is quite recent, it's only been a couple of weeks, and I'm filming this video now. And hopefully it will be a little bit therapeutic for me, and at the same time be educational for those people who are watching and for other people who may be going through something similar in their lives, or just to give you an idea of how my life has been. For those of you who are new to my channel, and even for those who have already been watching this channel, just so you know, my mom appears from episode 9 all the way to episode 46 of Cooking with Pops. So if you do want to go back and look at the older episodes, you will be able to see how my mom was earlier on when she was still able to speak. We used to actually get her to say the names of the ingredients in the food. And then later on, as things progressed, we changed her activities in our videos. And that will give you a better idea of my mom. So to begin this story, let's go back to 2015. That was the year we found out that something was up. So my parents have had a family business for many years. My mom has always done the number crunching and the accounting for the business. And in January 2015, when she was crunching the numbers, all of them came out wonky. None of the numbers came out right, and me and my dad, we sat with my mom and we figured out that she was not computing the numbers, something was off. And my mom's really good at math. So right away we knew something was off. So right away my dad took mom to the doctor, and then the doctor started sending us to many different specialists for different tests. They were checking for everything from cancer to anything else that may be possible, to brain tests, to full body scans, to blood tests, like everything you can think of, they were just checking on her. So going to all these specialists and all these different people, it took almost a year to get all these tests done and all these different things done. And within that time, her health also started deteriorating a bit more. But almost a year after we started going into these tests, towards the end of 2015 or so, maybe early 2016. At that time, they diagnosed mom and said, yes, she has moderate dementia, most likely caused by Alzheimer's. And for those of you who may not be too familiar with what Alzheimer's is, I will just give you a basic idea. It basically is a disease that blocks communication in your brain, and slowly it kills off your brain and your ability to do things or remember things. And that's what causes the dementia. The dementia is like the symptom. Dementia is when your brain is altered so that you can't do your bodily functions or you can't do certain things properly. That is the symptom. So dementia is the symptoms. And dementia doesn't necessarily only come from Alzheimer's. You can get dementia other ways. You might have hit your head somewhere in a car crash. There's different ways that dementia happens, but in our case, it was the Alzheimer's that caused the dementia. So when they diagnosed mom, they already diagnosed her with moderate dementia at that time. So one thing that happened during that 1 year when we were trying to figure out what was going on is mom's speech slowly started to go. So she was able to speak in sentences before, and then slowly her sentences disappeared, and she would start repeating the same sentence over and over. She would respond to everything with just yes. She wouldn't really speak or respond to questions properly. Every response was just yes. So you could see her ability to form sentences and things like that was going. Also, her attention span was going away, so she couldn't focus on one thing. She would focus on one thing, then look the other way, get distracted really easily. So being able to focus on things was slowly starting to go as well. So anyways, once mom got diagnosed with the dementia, my dad decided at that time to close the business, and he was going to become a full-time caregiver for my mom. And also at that same time, I made the decision that I'm going to do everything I can in my power to assist dad to help look after mom. So between the two of us, we were determined to look after mom on our own. We were not going to be putting her in any care facility or any home. All the care she needed, me and dad we're going to provide for her. Now, not everybody is able to do this based on life circumstances, but we had an opportunity where we were able to do it, and we made a firm decision to do so. And right now, I'm so glad at this point that we did do that, because in my mind, in my soul, in my heart, I feel a lot of peace at this time, because I know me and my dad, we did everything we could for my mom, and that really helps us get through this time in our lives. So one thing you need to think about as a caregiver is making sure that you also take care of your health. If you are not functioning optimally, then the person you're looking after, how are you going to take care of them? So one of the things they tell you right away, like the doctors and the specialists, is basically, as a caregiver, you got to make sure you get your rest. You got to make sure you eat healthy. You got to make sure that your health is good so that you are able to provide the optimal care for your loved one. So the really good thing was that me and my dad were teaming up. So we give each other breaks. If dad goes out for a little bit, I'll stay with mom. And if dad's home, I'll go out, do whatever I got to do. So at least we were giving each other chances to take breaks and go out and do different things. But we did realize from earlier on that at this point, there will always have to be someone in and around with mom, at least to a certain degree, to be able to look after her and be there with her, as she definitely needs that type of support. So back in 2016, the other good thing was mom was still able to walk well. So my dad would actually take her for walks outside. Also in our building, my dad would take her up the stairs, a couple of flights of stairs, and then walk her in the hallways, and then bring her back home afterwards. So she was still able to do exercise and move around. And one good thing that you're supposed to try to do is keep the patient, the Alzheimer's patient, the dementia patient, as active as possible. So we made it a big part of our goal to keep her as active as possible, as mobile as possible, for as long as possible. So sometimes my dad would walk my mom, sometimes I would walk my mom, and like I said, at the beginning she was still independent, walking on her own and moving on her own. My dad could still take her on the subway system, she could walk to the subways, and at that time they started going to the Alzheimer's Society, which is a group in Toronto, which has a central location, and at that location they have gatherings maybe once or twice a week at different days where different people come together who are going through the same thing, and they do activities together, and they have date nights, and they have different types of fun things to do, and it keeps everybody active. It also gives a support for people that are going through the same things in life, and there's also people there to help support and know how to deal with people who have Alzheimer's. So 2016 was still pretty good in that sense. We're still active, moving. Mom's still able to go on subway. And the only weird thing at that time was there was a few instances where mom disappeared. So she walked off on her own. Once when my dad came home, he always used to make mom wait at the elevator while he went and checked the mail. He's been doing this his whole life, and she always waits for him. This particular time, he went to check the mail and she disappeared. When he came back, she was gone. So when dad came up the elevator in the apartment building, he asked me if mom had come in the house. I said no. And then I went to the elevator and I was trying to call an elevator, and somehow the elevator that opened, mom was in it. So luckily I caught her right there and I brought her home. But she had just got on the elevator, and I think she was just riding it up and down a few times on her own, I'm not sure. But she was in the elevator when I called it. So that was one incident. And another incident was when dad was in the kitchen cooking some food and mom was in the living room watching television. She literally got up and just walked out of the house, and dad didn't even notice because he was cooking. He thought she was there. Then he came out to check on her and saw that she wasn't there, went in the bedroom, she wasn't there, and then came back and saw the door was unlocked. He opened the door, looked out, she was completely gone. So she left the apartment, she took the elevator, and she was gone somewhere in our complex. So my dad called the police right away, he called the security in our building right away, and they went out looking for her. At that time I was at work, so dad didn't call me to tell me. He was basically just looking for her at that time. And then luckily one of the cleaner people in our building found my mom. So he let security know, and then security called my dad, and my dad went and picked up mom. And from that point on, we realized that we got to be more careful that mom doesn't walk out the house or leave. But luckily for us, that was the only other time it happened, and we kept an eye on her after that so she wouldn't do anything like that. And luckily, those were the only 2 incidents for us. But be aware, as a caregiver, these kind of things are possible. Now, as time progressed, Mom's walking ability kind of got weaker. She was not able to walk as well. And also the right side of her body started to go a little bit in terms of her feet would drag a little bit, and her movement wasn't as good on the right side. And this was again being caused by the Alzheimer's affecting that part of her brain. Now, one other thing I want to mention is Alzheimer's attacks different people in different ways in different parts of their brains. So when you normally hear about someone who has Alzheimer's, a lot of time people just think of someone, oh, he doesn't recognize you, he forgets their whole family. And in my mom's case, none of that happened. The part of the brain that was affected for my mom was mostly physical ability, physical movement, speech, things of that nature. And memory-wise, her long-term memory was very good. Her ability to recognize people was very good. It was just her attention span, being able to focus on one thing, that was kind of shot. So like her short-term memory was kind of shot. But she knows everybody. If she knows you in life from before, she will know you when you come and see her. And that stayed with her all the way up until she passed away. She never lost that part of her. She always recognized everybody till the end. So it just goes to show that Alzheimer's isn't always a complete memory loss. It can be different for different people. And in my mom's case, it was all physical abilities of hers that were affected. So slowly, as her right side kind of started to go a little bit, at that time there was a few incidents where mom kind of like stumbled on staircase and my dad had to catch her, and it started becoming dangerous to take her on stairs. And then also she started getting weaker and walking far distances, like going on the subway, things like that. She was having trouble with that. He started taking her on the elevators instead of up the escalators and things of that nature. But there came a point, maybe it was late 2017, maybe 2018 at that point in time, where one day dad brought her out the subway right next to home and she was too tired to walk home. So I had to actually drive to the subway station and pick her up, and we put her in the car. And that was pretty much the last time we took her on the subway on our own. After that, we were lucky enough to be able to initiate something in our city in Toronto, and it's called the Wheel Trans service, which is basically for people who have disabilities or handicaps. They actually send taxi cabs or big buses that can take in a wheelchair and things of that nature, and they will take you from point A to point B in these vehicles. So we qualified for that because of mom's situation, and from here on out we started taking her through Wheel Trans. And again, through Wheel Trans, early on when she wasn't sitting in wheelchairs and stuff like that, we used to just take her by these taxi cabs, which would cost as much as a regular bus token. And then later on, when she was more sitting in the wheelchair at certain points of the day, then they would bring the big Wheel Trans buses for us, and they would roll her into the chair and take her from point A to point B. So another thing I want to talk about is my mom's speech. Even though she couldn't speak in sentences, she still remembered a lot of words, individual words. She could repeat words, and she was able to do that all the way up until the beginning of 2021. She was still able to repeat words. Although her vocabulary slowly got less and less and less, she was still able to speak. And you will see up until the second last cooking video we did, Lamb, that she was able to even lip her name. She could still do the mouth motions of her name. So that just goes to show she still was there mentally. She still knew her name. She knew how to lip her name at least, and she knew, like I said, who's around her, what's going on. And even when I tried to instruct her to do things, when she did pay attention to me, she would actually try to do those things. So that let me know that she was mentally there. Otherwise, she wouldn't be able to do the things I was asking her to do and trying to get her to do. So another thing, part of looking after mom was helping her to do her daily tasks. So early on, bathing, brushing her teeth, all those kind of things, she could still do it. 2016, 2017, maybe up to even 2018, she was still able to do a lot of these things on her own. But again, at a certain point, we had to start monitoring her. So there was a point that came where my dad used to put her in the tub so she would shower herself, but one day she came out of the shower steaming because she had only cleaned herself in hot water alone. So she was steaming, and my dad realized, oh, she only turned on the hot water. She didn't remember how to, warm up the water and keep the right mixture of temperature. So from there on out, my dad had to monitor her during her baths. And also, we used to leave her to brush her teeth early on, and she would brush her teeth and then actually walk out on her own into the living room and sit in the living room on her own. But then one day, I think this is again maybe around 2018 or so, she actually fell in the bathroom while she was brushing her teeth. So she might have lost her balance or something happened and she fell down. Luckily, she didn't break anything, nothing happened. She got a little bit of bumps and bruises. We took her to the hospital. Luckily, nothing was wrong. But from that point on, my dad had to stay with her for all her washroom tasks, from brushing her teeth to using the toilet to taking a bath. So from a certain point on, we always had to be with her all the time. Again, this becomes really, really difficult for an individual person. So in and around that same time when she fell, right around that time, we started getting extra help as well. We got PSWs, which are personal service workers, and they come and help you. So they help give mom a bath. They help with the getting her up in the morning, the daily morning tasks and stuff like that. So we started getting that help every morning, Monday to Friday, and then weekends we would do it on our own. And they will also come 3 times a week in the afternoon, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, to give her a bath in the afternoon. So Monday to Friday they would come in the morning, help us get her up and get her going, and then those other 3 days in the afternoon, someone else would come back in the afternoon and they would help bathe her and clean her. So we started getting some extra help, which made a difference for us. But again, primarily we were the main people caring for her. Now, another thing to keep in mind about PSWs, these people are trained to just help people in general. They are not specifically trained to help someone with Alzheimer's. So we almost have to train the PSWs how to handle someone with Alzheimer's. You cannot rush someone with Alzheimer's because they take time to process. They take longer than the average person to do things. So these PSWs, a lot of times they're under pressure, they're in a rush because they got to go to one house and they got to go to another house and so on and so forth. So we did have to fight for our time and say, listen, take your time. And even to the main head people, we said, okay, you need to give us more time so your person isn't always rushing and trying to leave. So there are things you got to play with and understand, and it makes a huge difference. Like a person with Alzheimer's, you got to keep in mind that if you rush them and you confuse them right at the beginning of the day, usually the whole day is going to go wonky and they're going to be confused and messed up the whole day. Whereas if you take your time and you slowly start them out and you make their day comfortable, you let them kind of orient themselves and they start the day in a nice and positive manner, then usually the whole day goes smooth. So the morning is so important to the whole day that you do not rush it and you allow them to go at their own pace. And then the whole day goes way better when you do that. And even at nighttime when we used to put mom to bed, we'd give her a lot of extra love and hugs and kisses and gave her a lot of extra care so that she would go to bed feeling good. And then in the morning we'd do similar things. We'd give her lots of time, lots of attention, and get her going with a lot of love and care. And her whole day would go very smooth because of that as well. So as a caregiver, when it's your own family member, you have the ability and the time to do that. Whereas when you put them in a home or you put them somewhere else, they may not be able to get that because these people are looking after multiple patients. So, there is a lot of benefits to being able to care for your own loved one. And I'm sure mom always appreciated that too, because she's surrounded by the people she cares about and these are the people looking after her. So all those things make a huge difference. Now, one other thing is, along with the Wheel-Trans, we also got the handicap parking access. So even when we drove mom around, we could at least park in some places closer to the entrance, which helped us out a lot too. So going back to the exercises for my mom, as her right side was going a little bit worse and worse, her right hand would clench a lot of the time. So we used to always keep a towel rolled up and keep it in her hand. And you'll see it in some of our videos that she would have a towel in her hand. It was just to keep it from getting too stiff and too tight. And then also her right leg would start to swell up a bit. So we had to do a lot of movement in her right legs, moving it up and down, moving her ankles, moving her feet. So there was a lot of, I guess you can say like a physiotherapy or some sort of physical exercises we had to do, move her right side of her body more. And again, in 2018 or so, when the PSW started to come, they used to actually take her for walks in the hallway as well. Just take her one round in the hallway, bring her back. And then me, myself, I would take her for my own walks in the hallway to keep her moving, to keep her mobile. And at that time, she was slowly losing her balance and being able to walk on her own. So you would have to hold her hand or you have to walk with her to be able to get her to walk. And eventually it moved over to the point where she had the rolling walker kind of thing to walk. And then there came a point, maybe in about 2019 or so, when the PSWs could not walk her anymore. and the only person who can really walk her was me, because I had the strength and I knew that her right side was a little bit off, so I was compensating a lot when she was walking to be able to keep that side moving well and to still be able to keep her walking. And I was able to keep her walking up until a couple of weeks before she passed. So even though her walking got less and less, and even though she wouldn't walk as far, to do all her activities, she wasn't fully wheelchair bound. And I'm very proud about that, because I didn't want mom to be stuck in a wheelchair. And if I wasn't around, I believe probably early 2020, she would have been in a wheelchair full time after that. But she made it all the way till June 2021, still being able to walk, at least for some of the activities and some things that we needed her to do. And that really makes me feel good, because I know mom would always smile and feel good when she was able to move. And I would move her around, I would give her a little body twist, little arm exercises. I would make her do circles with her arms, make her put her arms out, put her arms up. I would do a lot of movements, and then I would also put on music, and I would just hold mom and dance with her and move her body around, so she would get blood flowing, so her metabolism would go. So I did a lot of things as a caregiver. I spent a lot of time and energy just trying to keep her body good. And I think that made a huge difference in her mental state and also her body functioning and body abilities to do things. And it kept her physically good up until the end. So I would say personally for me, the hardest years physically on me were 2020 and 2021. 2019 also was kind of stressful, because at that time I was the only one who could really walk her even at that time. But dad could still do a little bit of the walking and get her from point A to point B if it was a small distance in 2019. But from 2020 on, definitely it was me who was the only one who was able to do that. Now the blessing and the curse of 2020 was COVID, because when COVID hit, that was literally right around the time my dad could no longer take my mom from the bedroom to the washroom without putting her in a wheelchair. He had to do that and roll her. So when COVID happened, I got to start working from home. And from that day on, up until she passed, basically, I took her every day from her bed and walked her from her bed to the washroom, from the washroom to the living room. And I was the one able to keep her moving on her feet. So every single day of her life, from 2020 on, when COVID started, I basically moved her physically on my own. So it's not a small task. It definitely took a toll on my body. And again, that is why it is very key that you have to look after your own health for this kind of stuff. I used to make sure I get my rest, I sleep. Even in the day, I would take extra rest. And really, you have to make that choice to dedicate your life to do something like that, because it's definitely not an easy thing to do, but it's my mom. And for me, that was the most important thing. And like I said, I would never change that for the world. If I had to do it again, I'd do it 1,000,000,000 times if I had to. So for me, it was something I was happy to do for her, and I'm glad I did. So the main physical ability that ultimately led to my mom's decline was her mouth, right? Her eating ability. So in 2020, she was still eating well. And if you see our cooking videos, we always used to do the taste test with mom in 2020. And the lamb pilau video was the last one where she was still able to be fed food. And then at the end of 2020, she would chew her food, but she wouldn't swallow the food. She would just hold it in her mouth. And it was difficult to get her to swallow the food. And it was getting dangerous, because if she's not swallowing it, she could end up choking on it, and there could be more complications. So at that time, we spoke to the speech pathologist, the person who's a specialist in the mouth. And at that time, they said we should switch her over to a full pureed diet at that time. And from there, just give her liquid foods and liquid drinks. So 2021, from the beginning of the year, she started having liquid. She was doing well on the pureed food. My dad would still cook all these delicious foods and turn it into puree, which was really good because it tastes so good. Like, I was eating the puree, like if I'm stuck on puree, I want my dad's cooking as my puree because it's so good. So mom was still enjoying it, tasting it, eating it, doing really well with that. But as the months went by this year, her ability to do things with her mouth changed. So normally after brushing her teeth, I help her brush her teeth. And after that, I put water in her mouth and she normally spits it out. So instead of spitting it out, she started just opening her mouth and the water would just trickle out. And then afterwards, she wouldn't open her mouth anymore. I put water, she'd just hold it. So I had to manually kind of open her mouth and get her to take the water out. So it was getting her mouth wasn't cooperating as well, so you could see things going. And again, she was still able to say her name till earlier in the year, but then her vocal kind of went, and like I said before, she could still mouth her name, but she wasn't able to speak. And then in the last month or so, in about May, towards the end of May, when she would swallow her food, she would just clench her mouth. And then I have to get her to relax her mouth, open her mouth, and then give her another bite of food. And then she wouldn't eat as much food as before. She was starting to lose weight. She was getting a little bit weaker. And, you know, it was getting tougher with that. So we did our best. We tried to keep her eating. And a week before she stopped eating, she basically, every time I gave her a bite of food to eat, she would just bite her lower lip afterwards, and then she started cutting up her lower lip because she obviously was having some problem with the swallowing of the food. Now, if you watch episode 46 of Cooking with Pops, that was the day she actually stopped eating, which was on a Sunday before she passed. On that particular day, she basically stopped swallowing food or drink, and that was kind of the signal to the end. If you can't eat and you can't drink, that's pretty much it. So I tried for a couple of more days to try to get her to eat or swallow it, and she just wasn't doing it. And at the same time, we had to initiate palliative care. Now, of course, for palliative care, you can go to the hospital, but in this case, we're in a COVID time and all this stuff is going on. Only one person would be able to stay with mom, and we've been looking after her for almost 7 years now at home. So we wanted to finish off everything at home as well. So we asked our doctor to initiate palliative care at home, and it was a good thing because they had a palliative care doctor, they had a nurse, they had special PSW hours for us. They brought a hospital bed into the home for us. So we just took care of mom for 1 more week. She stopped being able to swallow food on a Sunday, and the following Saturday is when she passed away. So she made it about a week without any food and drink. Obviously, this was a tough moment and tough decisions had to be made. They had ways to try to prolong her life, possibly through IVs or through food tubes and things like that. But if we went through all these things, it may prolong her life, but it can lead to more and more complications. And prolonging her life for what? Because it's not like she's recovering from this. Her body's slowly on the decline. So we had to make a tough decision and say, listen, in this palliative care, we just want to be able to comfort her and give her the best care for the rest of the time she's alive without any kind of complications. So we just let the natural process happen. So they basically told us they have these cotton swabs which you can put in the water, and you can keep her mouth moist because she's not swallowing food and stuff like that. Her mouth gets really dry. These cotton swabs with the water in it, they can keep her mouth moist, keep her tongue moist. So we were doing all these things, and in the last week with mom, we spent a lot of time with her, talked to her a lot, gave her a lot of love, a lot of care, a lot of tears, a lot of happy smiles. It was a very emotional week, right? Many family members called, online calls, even a few came over to visit. Everybody bawling, emotional. My mom's a very good lady and has done a lot of good things for a lot of people. So many people were emotionally affected by this. And even for me, I was kind of surprised, like, wow, she's really affected a lot of people in a very deep way. And that's my mom for you. Like, she's always been kind-hearted. She's always been generous. She's been a woman of faith. She's always loved and cared for us and always done the right things for us. So it's a no-brainer for me and my dad to do the same thing for my mom. So being there for her in palliative care is basically being there for her for end of life. In the last few days, her breathing was really, really heavy, and the nurse said that's normal for someone going through this transition. And she said at a certain point, the breathing will actually change, and that will be around the time when she's close to going. So sure enough, on the Saturday, when it was close to time, she went from a very heavy, struggling type of breathing to a very calm and relaxed, deep kind of breathing. And at that time, we had the hospital bed and a PSW was there, so we sat her up, maybe 3/4 up. My dad was on one side, I was on the other side. And the last half an hour or so, we just stayed with our mom. A few video chat calls came in from 2 of my cousins. My mom actually paid attention and was able to see and focus on those phone calls, even though she was in her last moments. And one of my cousin's daughters, so a granddaughter, was looking at mom and she was crying. And mom even let out a tear at that time. So, you know, she knew what was going on. And then even after those phone calls, our last few minutes, we prayed with mom, told her we loved her, told her when God comes, you know, go with God, do what you got to do. Me and dad will look after each other. And we were there right till the end. And mom's face was kind of drooping over, so I was holding it up. and basically her breath started slowing down, and she took what I thought was her last breath. And then I just waited a bit, and she took one final breath at that time, and she just goes and she was looking at me at that time, and that was her final breath. So we were basically there right until her last breath. So as tough as this time has been, and as much as we're gonna miss Mom, there is a lot of peace that comes from knowing we did everything we could for Mom. And that kind of is the life of a caregiver. You gotta be there, and be there right to the end. And I figured there's no better time to make a video than now, when everything's fresh in your mind, fresh in my mind. It's good to put it on video so you guys know the whole story. Now, one more thing before I end this video is I just want to go backwards a little bit, because there's always hindsight, right? And hindsight is 20/20. And for my mom, for Alzheimer's, there's certain things that I didn't notice earlier on that maybe in hindsight, if I can go back, I would say, oh, these are signs that possibly something was wrong with Mom. But in a normal circumstance, you might not notice these things. So one thing about my mom, she's always been a worrier. She always worries about me, wakes me up for work, wake me up for school, checking on me, making sure I'm doing certain things. So a few years before 2015, maybe 3, 4, or 5 years before that, at a certain point she stopped worrying and stopped coming in my room to wake me up and stopped doing the normal things that my mom's done her whole life. And she just kind of like let me be a little bit. And at that time I thought she was basically, you know, finally letting me be a grown-up and taking it easy on me. But in hindsight, that's not a normal mom behavior. Another thing, she's always been cooking our whole lives. And a few years before we got diagnosed, she kind of stopped cooking as much. She cooked once in a while and not really cooked that much. But as you know, my dad loves cooking. So for us, that's not a big deal either. If she doesn't want to cook, Dad's gonna cook. But in hindsight, that's not normal mom behavior. Another thing, I used to do a lot of exercises with Mom. And I used to make her do like planks and squats and sit-ups and all this stuff, and before she used to always want to do them, but a few years before the diagnosis she was always trying to find an excuse not to do it. She'd always like be, oh, we'll do it tomorrow, I don't want to do it today. And I thought she was maybe feeling a little depressed or a little down, and in hindsight it wasn't that. It must have been the early stages of the Alzheimer's. But again, it's hard to tell at that time. Like, this is me in hindsight telling you these things, and hopefully if you have a family member that starts changing their behavior or is not doing the things they've normally been doing their whole life, even if it just seems like maybe they're down or not feeling well, my suggestion is just go get them checked out. Like, this is my own experience now speaking to you. So if your family member stops doing the normal things they've been doing all their life, just go get it checked. Because it may be nothing, but it could be the early onset of Alzheimer's. That's just my little blurb to you from my own experiences. Oh yeah, and one more thing, the other part of her being down and not feeling well, she would also not do as much activities, and she would sleep in a lot. So she was sleeping a lot more too. So obviously that made me also think she was feeling down and out. And I know her brother at that time was not doing good in health, so I was thinking maybe she's feeling down about her brother, and maybe, you know, it's something to do with that. But once again, I believe these were sort of indicators that in hindsight, again, hindsight being 20/20, that should have probably triggered me to say, hey, let's go get Mom checked, because these aren't normal mom behaviors. Anyways, this has been a very serious video about my mom and about my life as a caregiver. I tried to break it down in detail for you. It is a very emotional topic, but I wanted to sit through it and get through it. And I'm glad I did, and I hope it helps somebody else out there in a similar situation, and to give you encouragement and let you know it's always possible to do the best thing you can for your family. You will find the courage from within. You just have to dedicate yourself to it and be focused on it and do the best you can. Do your best and forget the rest. That's life. And for all of you people that have been following me, my mom, my dad up until this point, thank you so much for that. Me and Dad will be continuing our journey. We may take a little time to reorient ourselves and get things back on track, but we will be back with more videos, more cooking videos, more YouTube videos, more educational videos. So stay tuned for all that good stuff. Looking forward to seeing your comments down below on this topic. I know it's a very long video I put together, but it is a very important video, and this is probably going to be one of the closest videos to my heart. Other than my one about service to others, that is also another one of my videos that is very close to my heart, and both of these will be close videos for me, and I hope a lot of people watch it and learn from it. So thank you very much. We'll see you guys again soon. Take care. Peace out.